So we let's talk a little bit about your previous experience, and I think it'll give some context on sort of how you got where you are today. So, um, if I read it right, you were at Slum Consulting before Microsoft, and you were a senior engineer at Target, which is quite interesting, and I think everyone recognizes that name. But before that, but alongside that, you were also working as a manager at Insight. So, if you could talk about any or all of those things, and talk about how that has sort of colored your experience and brought you where you are today.
Absolutely. So if you think of my career journey and where it started and where it is now, one of the things I wanted to do, and this comes from a mentor and a guidance that I had from someone that was looking out for how I should grow my professional life. And one of the things I did early in my technology career is just have contract work, staff augmentation type roles. And often, this is over a few decades, and what I did in those early days is, implement solutions, technology, hardware, software, whatever you name it. And I often was struggling with the fact that these things were not designed right or properly thought out. And I was always wondering to myself, and who comes up with these ideas? Because some of these are not the right way to do it. Well, it turns out there is somebody out there doing these decision making. Someone is coming up with the solution, the consultants, the strategist. And so I wanted to work upstream into that realm. So when I started my career, it was essential contract work, staff augmentation. And then what I did next is try to figure out where those decisions were coming from. And then a company like Insight, where it was a value-added reseller at that point and still are, and they were helping large corporations get hardware and acquire software to go do initiatives that they had on their own. So I was trying to build on top of that. So I joined Insight to see how that magic worked. I learned a lot of things from my decision making on enterprise level software acquisition and hardware acquisitions and implementation goals behind it. But I still found there was a gap of who's making these decisions. And so what I did after that, I joined Target. Target was at that time in one of the upcoming big box retailers, and they still are today. But at that time, I was competing against Walmart in a different way. And I thought about how they're trying to get competitive advantage, and they were using software and hardware and solutions to build the competitive advantage, their brand, their way of their doing supply chain, and their way of doing inventory management. All these things became relevant. So I was understanding how business outcomes were connected to revenue generation and how hardware and software was building on top of that. When I was still not quite there, I was still not at the top decision-making spot of what these things are being done and designed. And then I realized there's strategy consulting firms like Accenture and the Deloitte and KPMG and McKinsey's doing a lot of that design behind it. And so I said, hey, let me figure out how those organizations do it. And so I was talking to my mentor at that time, and my mentor essentially said that, look, if you want to be a part of those large dynastic consulting organization, you should have done it right after you finish your college graduation and education, because that's where they get recruited from. That's where they start their journey. I was a few years behind it, so I couldn't just jump right into it. So I had to figure out a way to find an organization that was mature enough, but yet not looking for those early college graduates to start their workforce. And Sloan Consulting was just that firm. At that time when I joined Sloan Consulting, it was a very small firm, but doing a lot of strategy consulting and doing these businesses outcomes that customers were asking for, clients were asking for. And I had the opportunity to bring my experience of Target and Insight together to say, hey, okay, let me go to Sloan. And I had the opportunity to join them and build on top of that. And that's where I started realizing decisions were made through strategists and consultants based on business outcomes these customers and clients were asking for. And so I learned a lot about how to create the business value journey of an organization to figure out what they need for technology and hardware. And after I did that, I realized, even behind the scene, there's still another journey left, which is this initiative, these product companies like Google's, the Microsoft, Amazon, IBM. There is that last journey part of it. So as I charted my career journey, I took that learning and then ended up at Microsoft. So if you think about how I evolved here, I wanted to see how things were getting done at the trench level, at the field, but you had to kind of work its way upstream to figure out what those journeys were and how they were being created. And that's where I am today. That's why I'm at Microsoft. I took the learning from Sloan, where a lot of strategy and consulting was happening. Before that, it was Insight, which is essentially a value reseller, adding a lot of those components of the decision making. And then very early on in my career, that was the contract work, staff augmentation, essentially doing other people's plans and doing it right for that outcome. But ultimately, the conversation starts with the business value. No one's going to do any kind of acquisition or implementation unless it brings direct business value to their organization. And often cases, if it's a profit organization, the bottom line, the revenue that's going to make them differentiate from their competition.
Fantastic. So let's go back a little bit to sort of your previous experience with Slalom and your previous experience with Target. And could you tell me, first of all, with Target, you talked a little bit about some of the differences they were trying to make with their technology to become competitive at that time. So could you tell me how technology enabled them to sort of enter that market space and be able to acquire market share, especially with something like Walmart? Walmart is deeply entrenched as a provider in its space, and to be able to sort of acquire market share there, you have to have quite the advantage or quite the access or both. So could you talk a little bit about what you discovered there?
Absolutely. So it is, several years ago, right? So the dynamics of Target has changed since. But at that time, one of the things that they realized that, when you're a big box retailer, your cost of profit and acquisition is very thin. It's not a hugely profitable organization. So they had to keep their costs down and make it so that they could maximize their reward on their investment. And the way they were doing that was using technology, essentially augmenting human tasks and capability using technology, either it be the ERP, either it be the supply chain, productivity, whatever they needed to do, they were getting ahead of that. At that time, when I was working them, their e-commerce platform was not something they built. They said, hey, look, why build something when we can go get something that's available readily at that time in the industry? And so even their Target.com website was not powered by their own proprietary e-commerce solutions. They used to have this platform called Guest Services. Guest Services was the essential CRM of knowing who you're selling to, who your target customer and buyers are. They used that natively, and they created the analytics on top of that, because at that time, analytics was not a big, powerful capability natively available like we have today in .com with internet-facing solutions. And so they're building these things, and technology was the way they're differentiating at that. If you think of at that time, Walmart was a large big box retailer, and they were doing volume, and they were maximizing their vendor relationships by pushing them to acquire solutions in bulk. Target decided to do a little differently. Target said, hey, look, if we're going to be in niche, we have to have unique products, and to have unique products required to work with supply chain providers that were small. They didn't have to have dynastic capability to supply thousands of stores. They didn't enough to go in demographic and geography capability. And so they were using technology to drive that conversation to say, hey, look, if this West Coast is in the West Coast versus the East Coast, there's certain product subtleties that'll be different. And then we'll work on maximizing those things. But they were also learning from the fact that Walmart had already negotiated large contracts with larger suppliers, like the commercial good suppliers, like the toothpaste and the shampoos. And so they didn't need to have the same thing recreated from the ground up. They just maximized that value proposition by saying, hey, let's do it better, quicker, and faster, while uniquely positioning their brand at that point. And so when you think of a company like Target, at that time, in that slice of time, they were trying to do more with less and using technology and software to do just that.
So primarily optimizing their operation cost within the same sector, and that increases their margin is in sort of what they're trying to facilitate, and then doubling down on e-commerce platforms, bringing them in-house, and then optimizing them, or optimizing them, of course, but at that time, there wasn't a competitor where people had their own e-commerce platforms. But a question I would have also is why don't other people why didn't other people bring that in at that point? And is doing it yourself that much more cost effective, that it's able to eke out that much profit at a scale?
At that time, absolutely correct. It was much easier to do it themselves because there's not a lot of variety of solution context. I'm like, we were talking about before even the internet became a mainstay in e-commerce platforms itself, right? So it was very directionally focused at that time, and that's what my experience was.
Could you talk to me a little bit about what you learned regarding leadership, and because you talked a little bit about being in at a certain point and then trying to go deeper down the pipeline and see how decisions are made and why decisions are made. So moving on to some of the other places you were at, what did you find there that was a little bit, that really was the issue with, especially with consulting, being in different places, why things are done incorrectly, or why things were done in a way that you didn't seem to feel would actually be, successful in the long run?
Yeah, so this dynamic nature of consulting or solutions or implementation has rapidly changed. So think of everything that happened before COVID as just academic in nature. Those are lessons learned. Those are not applicable. And what I mean by that is what has happened in consulting and leadership all the way to now is you have to make decisions very fast, and you have to make decisions based on data. You can't do it on a gut feel. You can't do it on a gut check. Those leadership qualities of, hey, I'm good at this because I just feel, a spidey sense, a tingle. It's bullcrap. And anybody's doing that kind of decision making is really not doing decision making. They're just going with the gut feel, right? You have to use data. Luck has, in my opinion, luck is just, right place, right time, not really a luck, so if you think about the decision-making quality, it's all based on data. And if you don't have data, you're making wrong decisions, right? And so the leadership skills that I've learned is even those people that are making those strategy decisions, and if they were incorrectly made, it wasn't because somebody was just not good at their job. They made a decision based on the data they had at that time and that spot. And that decision led them to a place where it may have been incorrect and they couldn't pivot fast enough to make the change. So some of these decisions have to be made very fast, very quick. So if you think of leadership skills that are applicable today is being agile, being able to fast pivot on anything, including software engineering development, the whole ability to write software for exploits or zero-day exploits that need to be corrected has to be done very fast, very quick. You can't sit in a room, have a waterfall project management approach over time and days and weeks. You have to do it very fast, very quick. So if you think of the skills required, the developers and the mindset has to pivot into a technology framework that requires you to be able to compartmentalize those things and develop against it and then deploy against it in a way that is going to maximize those decision-making points, capability. If you use COVID as an example, what happened during the COVID shutdown or lockdown, supply chain took a humongous hit because the traditional way of supply chain was you looked at your demand, you ordered to your suppliers, the suppliers made the stuff, put it in a boat and shipped it across, right? That took a huge hit because everybody is trying to stay home and work from home, and they were going to less to the grocery stores, and they needed supply of products right there and then. It wasn't that everybody just woke up one morning and made the bad decisions. The organization, the world at that time was designing solutions or products on a longevity of scale that did not account for a pandemic. They did not think of it that way. They did not think supply chain would take a hit. And so when you think of all those solutions, all the platform, all the capabilities had to pivot hard, was based on the fact that we need real-time data, real now. And how do you get real-time data? If you're a supply chain and a factory floor, you may have to use IoT sensors to make sure that you have data point and decision points from every segment of it. You have to have digitized capability and get rid of analog systems. You have to have that data sit in a place which is readily accessible. That's what the cloud solutions kick in, right? You web-based, web interface-based applications. So there's no need to develop apps that have a standardized protocol and capability behind it. So web interface capability, just like you and I are talking on a digital recording platform that's web-based. We didn't have to install fat clients on our systems and solutions to have this conversation for recording purposes. It was done because these capability of developing solutions in the traditional software engineering model was not going to scale. And so when you think of that, that's what it really identifies for good leadership and skills. And so you have to make decisions based on actual data. And if you don't have the right data, you're going to make poor decisions. And you cannot wait on data all the time. You have to make sure that if data is a choke point, build systems that get the data to you fast and quick.
Got it. So let's talk about customer success and what you're doing with customer success at Microsoft. So I think we've gotten an idea of sort of the framework with which you leverage in order to gain some of the knowledge that you do have. And a lot of it is being in consulting, being able to see how lots of different organizations build and also building yourself. And then how does that exactly help with customer success? I mean, a little bit of that is obvious, but I'd like to hear it from your point of view and see how those things have intertwined to give you the skills you need for what you do now at Microsoft.
Absolutely. So customer success, while it seems a relatively new discipline or career trajectory, it's really not. The idea of customer success is in the words itself. You have to have a customer and you have to make sure their success is highlighted, right? In the world of Microsoft, where I live and do the customer success role, is identifying my customers, the solutions they have purchased from Microsoft, and making sure that is useful for their success. And this comes in a variety of forms and solutions. It is highlighting customer success in the world of cloud solutions because that's where the technologies are all pivoted towards. So if you think of acquisition of tools and technologies that are SaaS oriented, I can't have a customer buy things just because it looks good. It's not a bundle pricing. It is not an enterprise agreement. They have purpose for those things that they're acquiring. I need to connect the dots. So customer success in the context of anything is about the customer's success. And some of these customers have customers of their own. So sometimes you have to go 2 layers deep. You have to find out their customer success to figure out what solutions and success they would have so that they would use the technologies and solutions that you are trying to put in front of them. The discipline is around understanding the business value of every customer that you're working with. No one's buying solutions and technology or consulting or people or hiring for anything but their success. Even in the nonprofit world, if you're, let's say, a healthcare provider, your intent might be to save lives. That's their success criteria. They're not looking at how they're saving lives. They just have to make sure that they have a criteria there. So when you create metrics and dashboards and capability of return on those investments you're making, how about you connect that dotted line of I saved lives because I buy these technologies and solutions? If you can connect that customer success journey, now you have successfully identified what it would take for you to position the advocacy of solutions and technologies that they may want or may not want. And so when you think of compete landscape, why would somebody move away from product A and go to product B? It's not because they had a good salesperson with great discipline or great pricing. Yeah, those make a difference. Ultimately, a decision may be made or price because that's how sometimes people are going to get the better return or better investment model. But before that journey happens, there's purpose for their success. And somebody was taking the time to connect the dots. Like, hey, if you invest in my product, I can guarantee a level of success for you and your customers because this is how you're going to get there. So that business value tie-in. So customer success roles have 2 purposes. One is understanding the product and portfolio and solutions that you are trying to peddle, but also understanding your customer's domain and discipline. If you're in healthcare, if you're in education, if you're in supply chain, if you're manufacturing, if you're energy, whatever it may be, you have to know those things so you can now bring purpose to the solutions and services you're trying to bring forward, including consulting. Like even consulting organizations now have customer success because a consulting organization will not get hired if you cannot tie the purpose of your consultation that you're going to do to that customer. So if you're a strategist and that's what you do, business value strategy, well, you have to understand that customer needs business value because maybe there's data points that show that your strategy is always off. So you need to pivot. That's how leaders get hired. That's how people are making C-suite advancements because they're saying, hey, we need this or all this kind of capability. So whenever you think of customer success in any discipline in technology, you have to understand it is by purpose of your customer's customer or your customer's success plan for that business value they need to return on those investments they're going to make sooner or later.
When we're talking about customer success, what is the range of the responsibility? So what I mean by that is when you have customer success, you're communicating to the customer that there's going to be an outcome here, and regardless, based on our relationship, is that outcome something that you manage and maintain throughout the integration process, or you rely on a team that's external to you that maintains that, and then relative to what side of that coin you're on, how do you make sure that the outcome actually hits? Because some of these outcomes may happen, a year, 2 years, and especially with a company like Microsoft, the organizations you're dealing with have long cycles for anything in general because they have 5-10 year plans. So how do you manage that and meet those expectations and obviously again relative to how much control you have over that?
Yeah, so customer success as a discipline or a place of career has evolved and is continuing to evolve. But yes, you have to stay connected to the entire life cycle of that journey. So there are some pillars that have come into bear in the context of customer success. If you went into the internet and searched what it looked like, customer success roles, they'll tell you there's some pillars of discipline, but there's a core component. There's essential baseline, a foundational capability. One of the most important part of this is enablement and onboarding, right? No one's going to implement a tool or solution unless you got them there the proper way. And you will not get there unless you knew the outcome exit strategy. So as a customer success role, and there could be several of these in an organization due to the nature of the products and solutions, or like you mentioned, it takes years and decades to get there. You will have to stay to the journey. It's not once and done. Now, there are products and solutions that could be once and done, but those are consumer-oriented products. Perhaps there may be very solution solvent in the way that they're going to be there. I'll use an example that's becoming a recent craze, right? With the generative AI solution, a lot of people are creating AI-infused headshots for their profiles, or just photographs that they want to use for headshots in their business purpose sense, right? There's a good chance that's a once and done thing, right? So the customer success role behind that paid product, many of them are free, but if you were a paid product, say if you're going to go get a digitized AI-infused headshot, you're going to buy for, say, like 20 pictures. So your customer success is about what is the outcome you want. You want good pictures, right? So I'm going to sell you that license or that you want to use case and be done with. You probably won't come back for a while unless it was that awesome, right? So the customer success journey is going to be small at that. But then the customer success journey is in large enterprise and corporations that will take years. So you will have to know the exit strategy, how the outcome will be recognized as successful. So if you think of C-suite roles, somebody says, I want to have an efficient supply chain. That board level decision or that C-suite decision is being made with the outcome that they want. Like, hey, in 5 years, I want to be profitable with my supply chain by reducing costs on whatever, right? They come up with an idea. That idea could be generated by that leader or come from a strategy consulting firm like, McKinsey or somebody like that comes with that. They come up with that. So as a product provider in the world of Microsoft, when I'm doing this positioning the Azure cloud and the data analytics that go on it, I need to connect that dot that if you implement my data and AI strategy, my intelligent cloud strategy, my Azure platforms, you will be able to have a better supply chain and decision-making capability. Therefore, you are reaching the outcome you want. So that customer success manager role or customer success role will have to make sure that you have that exit strategy in mind. And it could take years to get there. So you have to understand those investments that are being made are focused on that. So yes, the journey can take years. It can be taking months. It can take minutes. It depends on what kind of product and solution you're highlighting and positioning.
So you alluded to and continued on the theme of AI, and which is sort of the main purpose of this meeting and podcast and episode. Thank you for watching. If you like what you saw, take a look at the description. You'll see segments. You'll see the full podcast. Go take a look. Please go listen. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. We'll see you later.